Good evening, everyone. My name is Mark Kingwell, and I'm a professor of philosophy here at the University of Toronto. What is play? There is no agreed upon philosophical definition, no necessary and sufficient conditions of play, but I'm going to put this forward as a proposal for a definition. Play is time out of time. And when one has only 7 minutes to speak about something so complex, one is very conscious of time. I want to draw a distinction, which is actually an ancient Greek distinction between two kinds or notions of time. The first is chronos, which gives us the word chronology, chronological. That's time that's measured, usually in linear fashion, equal units, time that marches on, marches forward, time that is lost and saved and spent and wasted. There is another Greek word that translates as time, kairos, which means eruption or a kind of bursting. And I think play is kairotic time, time out of time, where we burst out of the chronological rigidity and discipline of everyday life and find ourselves a And in many orders of the animal world, we find things like this, where there is a tacit agreement not to actually hurt, to bite without hurting. And this is part of what play does. It gives us an opportunity to test the limits of our interpersonal or interanimal relationships. This is, people often ask me when I've shown this slide, is this you and your brothers? In fact, no, it's not, although I do have two brothers, and we almost certainly enacted this, although I don't think we ever had matching turtlenecks. So play among humans is a keen form of socialization because it allows us to understand our place in the order of things, and sometimes to cry foul, to make claims of injustice, which are key to our development. Play is also, of course, a source of imagination or a site of imagination, especially in the form of pretending. So if in time out of time we're socializing, we're not just doing that. We're also exercising this capacity to imagine things as otherwise than they are. So to feed the teddy bear is to do something which makes no literal sense because the teddy bear is not a real bear. If it were a real bear, you wouldn't be able to feed it. But for the child, pretending that the teddy bear is real in the act of feeding is a kind of engagement with possibility. Pretending is, however, a risky business. So I can shoot you with a pretend gun, but that might be, under certain circumstances, an assault in criminal law. Pretend guns are dangerous things. They're also dangerous things when they're ineffective, when I might want them to have more effect than they do. My pretend pistols have no power when you have real guns. But pretending is essential to our sense of ourselves and our creation of worlds. We are world-making creatures, and pretending is not something that only children do. I want to say, and I think this is probably something that's on the minds of everyone, that maybe there isn't enough play of these open-ended kinds available to young children today, young people today. This, by the way, if you Google the word play, just play, this is what comes up by far the most often as an image. Okay. The play symbol on some video game or console. And I'm not going to belabor the point, but I do want to say that the kinds of pretending and socialization where we have open-ended engagement with each other and with the world are far more profound than the kinds of directed play which are available in even narrative and open-ended games. So here's a distinction. I'm going to talk a little bit now about the subset of play that is games. And not all play is games. And there are different distinctions to be drawn here. But games are specific kinds of play which most typically, but not exclusively, aim at a result. So a game of a certain kind, say a sporting contest, like hockey, aims at a result, and it generates its result in part by containment. So you can see this in the typical outline of a hockey rink, all of the rules of the game are actually physically enacted here with the circles and lines. If you follow the game, you know why the blue line is important for the offside rule. You know why the red lines are important for icing. You know why the center red line is important for passing and illegal passing and so on. The game is contained by boards, literal boards in this case, which are also important for generating friction between you and your opponent. But not everything is covered by the rules. And it's an interesting thing about hockey and some other games that though they are constrained or confined in this particular way to generate a result, they also have a certain kind of code. There was a player recently, a Canadian player, who criticized a referee after a game and then had to apologize because he had broken an aspect of the code. Having a fight, which might seem like it's inconsistent with the game, is actually, of course, part of the culture or code of the game. So these are important games, but I want to suggest there are at least two other different kinds of games. So games that force results are one kind, and typically they are in these rectangular patterns, like a hockey rink, a football field, a tennis court. Here's an interesting game that has a different kind of geography, baseball, my favorite game. And as you may know, one of the quirks about baseball is that it doesn't go according to time. There is no clock at a baseball park. There is no countdown. The game is entirely endured and enjoyed in outs and strikes. I say that because even though I'm a fan, I've sat through many games where people said, like Homer Simpson once when he was not drinking beer at a game, "This is so boring, I can't believe I'm here." That's not the purpose of beer at a baseball game, by the way. It's to enhance your enjoyment. But I know some people find baseball boring. Theoretically, a baseball game can go on forever. It is a game of infinite possibility. No actual game has yet gone on forever, but according to the rules, it could. The other thing that's fascinating is the foul lines that you see there extend infinitely. There is a fence to mark home runs, but the foul lines themselves, theoretically, notionally, go forever. And because of that, they actually encompass the earth. So think about that the next time you're bored at a baseball game. You're looking at home plate, that is the point from which the entire earth is encompassed. And the game may go on forever. So that's a game that has a kind of opening up, or I want to say a quasi-infinite capacity. So if the first kinds of games are finite games, games with results, a game like baseball is quasi-infinite. And then there are third kind of games that I want to call infinite games. And I'm following the philosopher P.J. Carse on this, by the way. Games where the infinite is the point. Not just a possibility, as in baseball, but the point. And here is an illustration. You may recall a famous passage from Salinger's Seymour, an Introduction, where the writer is talking about how he was playing marbles with a friend. And he scored a hit with his marble. And Seymour, watching on, says, can you stop trying so hard? Can you stop aiming so much? And his brother's puzzled, and he says, well, if I don't aim, how can I hit it? And the Seymour character says, well, if you're aiming, it means that somehow you believe you won't hit it. Aiming is already a confession of a certain kind of failure. And I think of this as what you might call the Zen or the Tao of marbles. And here's the Zen archer. The Zen archer knows that time, in the chronological sense, is just an illusion, and there is no aiming. Right? Yoda, do or do not, try not, there is no try. Right? The arrow is always in the target. It has always been in the target. It will always be in the target. And the act of shooting is just the completion of a kind of inevitable fact. Now, that might sound a little bit mystical, and I think it is. Shelley just mentioned Plato. He's there on the left pointing up to the eternal realm of the forms. I actually prefer Aristotle, who's there on the right. And Aristotle's saying, take it easy, man. Reality is right here. You don't have to go to some extrasensory transcendental realm to find within ourselves the divine. The divine is always part of human life. It is the highest part of human life, Aristotle says. It is the part that makes us most human. And it is in play in these infinite games and the quasi-infinite games that point to them that we feel the presence of the divine. We feel within ourselves the sense of actual transcendental possibility that doesn't postpone reality to some other realm, but sees and knows that it is here. We do have to break the bonds of Chronos. We have to rupture Chronos with Kairos to find this transcendental or divine possibility. But when we do, we know, as Blake did in his famous poem, and this is his depiction of Jacob's ladder, that we can experience the world in a grain of sand and eternity in an hour. Thank you very much.